All right, everybody, today I'm going to show you some tips that will help you draw more accurately when you're drawing from a reference photo. This will also help kind of build your skill when you're drawing things in general, but specifically if you're using something you're looking at to make a drawing, these will help you get it more accurate. So here's our image we're using today. As you can see, I've kind of already marked it up with some reference guidelines from class today. We're going to use those in the video. Okay, so my goal first is in my drawing area, I want to get this bird to be accurate in proportions and placement on the page. Now, when I draw this, it's going to get scaled up. It's going to be a little bigger, okay? So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to position it in this area right here. So I'm making a line at the top, at the bottom with a little space, and then at the left. What I'm marking out is where the top of the bird is, the bottom of the bird here, and then basically this side, right? Now at this point, I have no idea where the right side needs to be marked at. Since we're trying to get it in proportion and accurate, what I have to do is take a thing I've already measured, use that as a reference to help me figure out what the other measurement is, okay? And so what I'm doing here is I've got to figure out, based on how tall the bird is, which I know here, how wide it is. So I'm using the height to figure out the width, okay? And so what I'm doing is I'm taking my pencil, I don't use a ruler on this, I take my pencil and I mark the top of the object with the top of my pencil, and then the base of it, I just grab the pencil there, okay? So in my picture, that's the height of the bird, okay? So what I'm trying to compare that to is the width. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to start basically on this side of the bird. I'm going to take my measurement of the height, I'm going to lay it down there, okay? And as you can see, the width of the bird is definitely more than the height. This is the height, right? So what I have to do here is go back to this area and do the exact same thing and then kind of guess a measurement here. So looking here, this is the width, this is the height of the bird. The width is probably another quarter of this, right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to measure this height. I'm scaling up, so I'm measuring this height, which is the same thing here, just different distance. I'm going to grab that there because that's the top and the bottom. I'm going to come over here. This is the height, and so I have to add about a quarter more of this pencil here, which is about right here. So I'm going to make a mark here, and I'm going to mark here. So this width should be accurate based on the height of the bird. If you keep it in this zone, it should be the right size, the right height. It won't be too skinny, and it won't be too fat, okay? The reason why I put 2 marks here is because the tail actually lands down here. So I'm just positioning it, all right? So my next step is I'm going to start to draw pieces of the bird and put the pieces together to make the entire drawing, okay? And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and bring that line up so I have a corner, okay? I'm going to draw the head. I need to show where the head is, okay? Now, based on this, I'm going to scoot the circle in a little bit. So the head is going to be like right in here, kind of, sort of. Now, I'm not exactly sure of the exact size of that. I'm using an oval to represent that, but for right now, that's all I need, right? And here's the thing. We're not trying to draw details. We're not trying to draw perfect. We're just trying to place things into the drawing loosely where they belong. I'm drawing a little darker so that you can see what I'm doing, but you want to draw light enough to where when you're all said and done, you can erase all your construction lines and then have all the finished lines, okay? So now that I've got the head in here, and that's where I want it to be, I'm going to use that to help me figure out where something else goes in the drawing. I always look for something that's either attached to that I've already drawn or that I can easily connect. And it's something easy to draw, okay? And in this case, what I'm doing is I'm making the line, the angled line that shows where the back of the birds and the feathers are, okay? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come right here where kind of the back of the bird head is, and I'm just going to draw a line. And where that line is going, it has to represent the width of the bird, and then it has to be positioned properly in the frame. So I've drawn it from back here all the way out to the width, but then I've drawn it to connect down here because that's where it's sitting in the picture frame. See how low it is? So it needs to be below that area. Okay, you can see the gap there. So that's easy to do, right? Drew that, just connect that, make sure that goes in the right place. Step one. Okay? So for the next step, I'm going to look for something else on here that's easy to draw. Well, if I come to the front of the face of the bird, the neck kind of just comes down off the front of that, right? So what I can do there is come to the front of my face of my bird and just basically draw a little straight line. That's going to represent where the neck is. Okay? Easy. It's connected. I already have something to relate it to. And I just come down and kind of make it where it is. All right? And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show where the foot is actually positioned. As you can see here, I drew the level of it here, but it's actually positioned over here. So the thing that helps me line up where the foot is basically I draw a line straight down. If I go straight through the middle of the bird's head and straight down, that's where that toe is, right? It's on line with this. So all I got to do is come to the middle of the bird's head right there. I'm going to draw straight down. That's the level that it's on. So I'm going to make a mark right there. That's where the foot is located in the drawing, basically. Okay? Because I am going to adjust some stuff, but we're just trying to get it where it needs to be. So based on this, right, I did my little reference line straight down. If you go straight through the head, connects to the foot right there. So I did the same thing right there. Boom, straight through. Made sure it was on level. That's where that is. Okay? And since I've got that there, the next thing I'm going to draw is the leg. Right? So 3 things I'm focusing on here is the shape of shapes. Accurate, right? The relation of shapes to one another, where they go in the picture, and then angles of lines, super important. Angles are a big deal, right? And so this is an example of the angle I want to get. So what I'm doing here is I'm making the leg right there. So I'm going to come over here, I'm going to start here, and I'm going to look at my picture. I'm going to draw this line that's going to represent the leg. Now when I draw this, I want to make sure it's the right angle. I don't want it to be too tall. I don't want it to be laying down too much. I want to try and match it to that angle. I'm pretty happy with that right there. Okay, that looks pretty close. Close enough. And I can adjust it later. Okay? Then the next thing I'm going to do, right, is I'm going to draw, I think I'm going to draw the bottom of the bird. So what I need to do is come up a certain measurement, whatever this measurement is here, I need to come up a similar measurement, make a marker there. I'm going to draw straight across the bird, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw out to that line, the up and down line, just for now. I'm going to stop it right there. Okay, so what I've just done is I've come in here, I've tried to draw kind of more or less the bottom of that right there. Okay, once I get here, all I've got to do now is connect that to that, right? That's what this is. I'm connecting that to that. Boom. I'm going to check the angle, make sure it's pretty close. All right, I'm happy with that. Now here's the thing, when you're doing this, it's not going to look like anything like what you're drawing. It's going to be a bunch of just shapes until you kind of get some details, and then eventually it's going to all of a sudden start to look like the bird. So you kind of got to trust the process and be patient, okay? So I've got that. I think I'm going to draw the beak next because that's kind of an easy thing to do. So if you go back to your picture here, if you draw a line through the beak on the bottom, you'll see where the shoulder of the bird is and the head of the bird is. It's kind of in the same level. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of come here where I've kind of got that meeting of the two lines right there. I'm going to come straight across right there, and I'm just going to draw a triangle. I'm not going to try to draw the shape exactly. It's not really a triangle, but I want to place it where it goes. Okay? Awesome. All right? And now, like I said, things relate to other things. So what I just did here, combining with this line, provides the location of the eyeball. So the eyeball, if you put a split in the beak right there, the eyeball, that's the bottom of the eyeball, right? And then the back side of the eyeball hits that down reference line that you made earlier. It sits right there in the corner. Okay? So as you can see, the more things I'm getting in the drawing to reference, and the more I'm cross-referencing, the more accurate it helps me to be. Because it has to line up with multiple things once you get all said and done, right? So, like I said, we start easy, we do one thing correctly, and then we start to reference everything off of that, and then they all start to work together to create the image, okay? So we're in great shape here. So what we're going to do next is we're going to draw the wing, okay? And so if I go back to my picture here, the wing is basically where the head and the body meets right there, okay? It is below, now it's going to be actually a little bit below the eye line. If you come to that picture, you'll see it's kind of below the beak and the eye line, so we can kind of move it down a little bit to right there, okay? And so the wing is right about here at the top, okay? Now to draw the front of the wing, really what I'm looking at here is there's two pieces I'm looking at, the actual wing piece and the chest piece. You'll notice the wing is really thick and the chest piece is really thin, okay? And if I draw a line kind of where this goes, it kind of curves up towards the beak right there, right? Like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this wing shape for right now parallel to this, okay? More or less. And then when it gets down to the leg here, I'm going to bend it back to there. Now this will get a lot of adjustment, but it gets the wing kind of in the position it needs to be for right now, okay? So like I said, it still looks like a paper airplane kind of, but we're getting closer, okay? And so I'm going to go ahead and add in the little ground piece here. So when you're doing that, right, this side of the ground is level with the foot, so it's kind of up here. This part down here is low, right? This edge of the ground, if I drew a line straight up, it kind of lines up with the front of the bird, right? So I'm going to move that down, bump it up, make that kind of go up, and then this is going to go down. This part is kind of, you can just kind of draw it right about there. Okay. Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right. So now we have the shape of the bird. We've got it where it needs to be. Pretty happy with the sketch. You can actually, some of these lines, you can go in and start to erase if they're getting in the way of you drawing. Maybe just knock them part of the way out. You don't have to get rid of them all, but I want to kind of be able to see what I'm drawing. Plus it'll make it look more like a bird as we go, okay? What I want to do next is work the wing, because on the wing, when you draw something super complicated, you always want to draw the simplest areas you can and then add the details into that, right? And so this wing, as simply as I can break it up, it's one piece, but it's broken into 3 feather areas. You have the short feathers here, the medium feathers here, and then the longer feathers here at the bottom, right? So we want to divide this space up into those things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of come in here and I'm going to look at my drawing, and kind of where the neck and the chest meet is where the bottom of those feathers are right there. Now with my drawing, I've got to make some adjustments because that's starting, it's not in proportion if I do it with what I've got. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come up, I'm going to check like where that lines up right here, right? Make that line here. It lines up, the wing comes on the back of the eye right there, right? Okay. And then I want to figure out where this line is right here. So in my picture, it's kind of where the neck and the chest change directions. So for right now, I'm going to kind of go in there and I'm going to use that as a mark and come straight across. That should give me the shape, okay? And then all I'm going to do here on the second one is come to about the middle of the chest, and I'm going to draw another straight line for right now. This one's wider than this, so you want to make sure that's a detail you want to pay attention to, okay? So that's wider than that, and then of course you have the wing down here, okay? Now you can see it's starting to look like a bird. This is great, okay? So next step. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start to refine some shapes a little bit. So up in the top here, I'm going to kind of go in the neck here. I'm going to see where I'm going to get rid of my hard corners and start to create some curves to soften it up a little bit. So I'm taking the hard angles out of stuff. I'm also going to try and improve some curves, like that's not such a corner there. It kind of goes like so, right? Okay. The head of this is shaped differently than here, so I need to go in here and make this, it's not like a pointy point, but it's definitely not a circle, right? So I want to give it more of a point like that. Okay. Still not there, but it's getting closer. Okay. My wings, right? I'm going to go on the back side of that wing here. I'm going to go into the beak here, and I'm going to curve this out. It's got like a big clump of feathers. This thing kind of bulges out like that a little bit, right? And then you've got a second bulge here that goes boop and then straight down. So I'm going to figure out, where does that go? Well, you know what? If I draw a line here to here, this second bump is even with that line. So I'm going to come in here, create another bump, and then I've got my feathers here. And what I'm going to do down here is I'm going to create this little split in the feathers. So this is my main feather. They all kind of run along this line right there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to split that up. I'm going to come down here and make the smaller ones, right? Okay, and then this feather actually comes back across like so-ish, kind of so. So I've got an opening down here. This is like nice, okay. Looking good, we're looking good. Okay. All right. And then I'm going to improve the beak. So the way I have the beak, it's kind of like a canary. The raven's beak is actually curved on the top, and then it's more of a straight line back like that. So I'm going to fix that up a little bit more. Right. And like I said, you're starting to do the little things now that makes your very general drawing look more specific, like the picture here. Okay. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to adjust this wing right here, because the way I've got it here, it runs way far down here. So this wing should actually probably, it's going to come up more like something like that. All right, this feather actually goes, yeah, this thing goes underneath there, so you get a little thing like that. So I'm going to erase that line right there. I'm just going to knock off some of the other drawn lines around it. Okay. So I still need to work this. It's not quite in proportions. It's not bad, but you know, if I look at this, that crow looks a lot plumper. My bird looks a little skinny. So I think I've got some issues going on. Maybe around the back side back here. Maybe it needs to be wider up in the shoulders, right? So. All right. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead. It's got actual toes that come down here, and it's got a little talon that goes here. So I'm going to call this part 1 of the drawing, just the basic forming of the bird. And so I'll be back with 2 more parts probably. I'll come back. We're going to really refine the inside of this and the shape. And we're going to make sure we get all the, we want to get all the feathers drawn in there accurately. That's a lot to do. That'll probably be one drawing in itself, okay? And then we'll move into the shading of it, how to get the actual lights and darks, okay? But I think that's good for now, so good luck with that, all right? And we'll see you on the next video. Thanks a lot.